The salt spray kissed my face, cool and bracing, a stark contrast to the cloying warmth of the yacht's main saloon. Up here, on the topmost deck, the thrum of the engines was a gentle murmur, and the endless expanse of the Atlantic under a diamond-dusted sky was breathtaking. I was Violet, a 26-year-old barista from Brooklyn, a girl whose mornings usually started with the hiss of an espresso machine and the clatter of ceramic mugs. Now, I was a guest on a floating palace, a testament to the kind of wealth I'd only ever glimpsed in glossy magazines. This lavish retreat was courtesy of my best friend Chloe and her impossibly wealthy boyfriend, Julian Thorne. Julian. The name itself felt heavy, weighted with the kind of power that made headlines. He was a notorious tech mogul, a self-made billionaire whose companies shaped the digital world. He was also, by all accounts, intensely private, almost reclusive, which made this extravagant weekend cruise feel all the more exclusive and a little unsettling. Chloe had been over the moon when Julian invited her, and by extension, me. "Violet, you have to come. It's going to be insane. Think about it, 3 days of pure luxury, no Wi-Fi, just us, the ocean, and endless champagne." She'd practically dragged me from my cozy apartment, promising a much-needed escape from the grind of Brooklyn life. I'd reluctantly agreed, more for Chloe than for the luxury. I was a creature of habit, of predictable rhythms, and this opulent world felt jarring. But even I had to admit, the yacht was something else, a veritable floating 5-star hotel. Polished teak decks gleamed under soft lighting, uniformed crew members moved with silent efficiency, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and exotic flowers. We'd spent the day lounging by the infinity pool, sipping cocktails and trying to act like this was our normal. Chloe, ever the social butterfly, had navigated the small circle of Julian's inner cadre with effortless grace. I, on the other hand, had found myself retreating more often than not, observing the quiet hierarchies, the veiled glances, the subtle power dynamics that hummed beneath the surface of polite conversation. Now, as twilight deepened, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and fiery orange, I craved solitude. The main saloon below was still alive with music and laughter, the clinking of glasses. But up here, the wind whipped through my hair, carrying the clean scent of the ocean, and for the first time all day, I felt a flicker of genuine peace. I leaned against the railing, watching the endless black water churn below, hypnotized by the moonlight dancing on the waves. It was in this quiet moment, lost in contemplation, that I heard it. Voices, raised, from a secluded section of the deck, just around the corner from where I stood, hidden by a cluster of potted palms and the shadowed entrance to a private lounge. "You don't understand, Julian, this isn't fair." Chloe's voice, high-pitched, strained, not her usual bubbly tone. My stomach tightened. I knew that voice. It was the sound of Chloe when she was truly upset, truly cornered. Then Julian's voice, low and menacing. "Fair? I gave you everything, Chloe, everything, and you repay me with this." His words were clipped, laced with a venom I hadn't heard before. The charming veneer he presented to the world had vanished. A wave of unease washed over me. Should I reveal myself? Interrupt? My instinct was to help my friend, but something in Julian's tone, something cold and sharp, held me back. I was an uninvited audience to a private, volatile argument. I pressed myself further into the shadows, hoping to remain unseen. "It's not about what you gave me, Julian. It's about what you expect," Chloe retorted, her voice trembling but defiant. "I'm not some trophy you can just control. I have my own life, my own friends." "Friends?" Julian scoffed, the sound dripping with contempt. "You mean that barista friend? That's your life, Chloe? Pouring coffee and pretending to be something you're not?" My heart gave a painful lurch. He was talking about me, my humble profession mocked, my entire existence dismissed, a cold knot formed in my stomach. "Don't you dare talk about Violet like that!" Chloe's voice rose, raw with anger. She's more real than anyone in your entire phony world, Julian, and I'm sick of it. Sick of your rules, your paranoia, your constant demands." A silence fell, heavy and charged. I could almost feel the tension radiating from around the corner, the gentle hum of the yacht, the distant music from below. Everything seemed to fade, replaced by the frantic beating of my own heart. "Paranoia." Julian's voice was dangerously quiet now. Too quiet. "You think I'm paranoid, Chloe? About my investments? My operations?" "Yes! You're obsessed, and I can't live like this anymore. I just want out, Julian. I want out!" Then a sound, a sharp, distinct thud, and a choked gasp from Chloe. My blood ran cold. My breath hitched in my throat. Every fiber of my being screamed in alarm. That wasn't the sound of an argument. That was the sound of violence. My eyes darted towards the edge of the railing, just visible from my hiding spot. The moon, momentarily breaking free from behind a cloud, cast a stark beam across the dark, churning sea. And in that beam, for a terrifying, agonizing second, I saw her. Chloe, her arms flailing wildly, her face a mask of shock and terror, disappearing into the dark churning water below. The world seemed to spin. My mind went blank, then raced, trying to process the impossible. He had pushed her. Julian Thorne, the polished tech mogul, had just violently shoved my best friend overboard, into the dark, unforgiving Atlantic. I heard footsteps, calm, measured, walking away from the railing. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't panicking. He was just leaving her. Frozen in terror, my body screamed to move, to run, to scream for help. But a chilling realization slammed into me. If Julian saw me, if he knew I had witnessed this, I would be next. The thought was a paralyzing shock. I wasn't just an observer, I was a witness, a loose end. He had just tried to get rid of Chloe. What would he do to me, an unassuming barista, if he knew I held the truth? I pressed myself further into the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs, a desperate, frantic drumbeat of pure adrenaline. I squeezed my eyes shut, then forced them open. I had to see. I had to make sure he was gone. The footsteps faded. A door clicked shut, softly, almost casually. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the relentless churn of the ocean below. I waited. My muscles ached from tension. Every nerve ending screamed for me to move. After what felt like an eternity, I slowly, cautiously, peeked around the potted palms. The deck was empty. The private lounge door was shut. He was gone. He had walked away, leaving Chloe to drown. Panic, raw and unbridled, threatened to overwhelm me. Chloe, my best friend. She was in that water. Was she alive? Could she swim? The thought of her struggling, alone in the vast cold ocean, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I couldn't scream. Not yet. Not until I was sure he wasn't coming back. Not until I had a plan. My mind, trained to think quickly under pressure, albeit usually about latte art and quarterly sales, kicked into overdrive. I had to save her. My eyes scanned the deck, frantically searching for anything that could help. And then I saw it. Tucked away near the stern, almost hidden in the shadows, a small orange life raft, neatly folded, with a manual release lever. A rescue dinghy. My hands trembled violently as I fumbled with the lever. It was stiff, designed for emergency, not for a panicked 26-year-old barista. I gritted my teeth, pulling with all my might. The mechanism groaned, then clicked. With a whoosh of compressed air, the small inflatable raft deployed, tumbling over the side and hitting the water with a splash. Now for the next part. Getting down there. The yacht was high off the water. I saw a narrow emergency ladder descending from the side of the deck. I scrambled towards it, my fear overridden by the desperate need to save Chloe. I climbed down, my hands raw on the cold metal, my prosthetic leg, a constant reminder of my own past trauma, feeling heavy and awkward. I dropped into the dinghy, which bobbed wildly on the waves. The air was frigid, the ocean stretched out, an inky black abyss. My voice, when I finally found it, was a raw croak. "Chloe! Chloe! Are you there?" Silence. Only the rush of the waves, the vast, terrifying emptiness. My heart plummeted. Had I been too late? "Chloe, answer me!" I screamed, my voice hoarse, tears stinging my eyes. And then, faintly, miraculously, I heard it. A cough, a sputter, and a weak, desperate voice carried on the wind. "Violet? Is that you?" "Chloe, yes, I'm here. Are you okay?" I swallowed a lot of water. "I'm so cold. Where are you?" "I'm in the dinghy. Swim towards my voice. I'm here." I strained my eyes, peering into the inky blackness, trying to locate her. Every second felt like an hour. The immense yacht, now a distant, silent monster, loomed behind us. Finally, a dark shape emerged from the waves, a pale, shivering figure struggling towards the small raft. I leaned over, grabbing her outstretched hand, pulling with all my strength, hauling her half-drowned body into the dinghy. She collapsed onto the bottom, shivering violently, coughing up water. Her hair was plastered to her face, her expensive dress soaked and clinging. Her eyes, wide with terror, met mine. He pushed me, Violet. He tried to kill me." "I know," I whispered, my own voice trembling. "I saw it." The words hung between us, a chilling confirmation of the horror we had just endured. We were alive. For now. But we were adrift. 2 women in a small rubber boat, miles from shore, with a powerful, dangerous man on that yacht who thought he had silenced us forever. The night was vast, the ocean endless, and our future suddenly terribly uncertain. Our fight for survival had just begun, and the truth, a precious, dangerous cargo, was all we had. The dinghy tossed violently on the waves, a tiny speck against the vast, indifferent ocean. Chloe, shivering uncontrollably, clung to me, her breath ragged. We spoke in hushed, desperate whispers, recounting the horror, piecing together the terrifying minutes on the yacht. Julian, the push, the cold, calculated walk away. The memory of his face, devoid of emotion, sent shivers down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Hours stretched into an eternity. My muscles screamed from the tension of holding on to the inflatable sides, my eyes strained against the inky blackness, desperately searching for any sign of land, any flicker of light. Just as hope began to fray at the edges, a faint hum grew louder, then the unmistakable throb of an engine. A light appeared, growing steadily brighter in the distance. A fishing boat. Its rough, salt-stained exterior looked like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. The fishermen, burly men with weathered faces, looked startled to find 2 bedraggled women adrift in the middle of the night. Their relief, once they understood we were survivors, was palpable. They hauled us aboard, wrapping us in thick blankets, offering hot coffee and a kind of quiet, gruff comfort. We were safe. We were alive. The moment our feet touched solid ground at the small, sleepy port town the fishermen took us to, the adrenaline that had kept us going for hours finally crashed. We stumbled into the nearest police station, a small, unassuming building that suddenly felt like the most important place on earth. The officer at the desk, a tired-looking man named Sergeant Reyes, listened patiently to our fragmented, frantic account. Chloe, still shaking, recounted Julian's violent push. I corroborated, detailing what I'd witnessed from the shadows. We painted a picture of a calculating, dangerous man. Sergeant Reyes, initially skeptical, grew more serious as we recounted the details of Julian Thorne, the tech mogul. The name alone seemed to change the atmosphere in the room, from sleepy indifference to a quiet, almost fearful respect. "Julian Thorne?" he repeated, his eyes widening. "Are you absolutely sure about that, ladies?" We were. Absolutely. The wheels of justice, or so we hoped, began to turn. The local police, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the name involved, quickly escalated the case. Within hours, we were being interviewed by detectives, then agents from a federal task force. The story, a simple act of violence, quickly ballooned into something far larger, far more complicated. The media caught wind of it, of course. Tech mogul accused of attempted murder at sea. Our faces, pale and exhausted, were plastered across every news channel, juxtaposed with Julian's slick, confident mugshot from his company's website. The case quickly escalated to a high-profile trial. Julian Thorne wasn't just wealthy, he was immensely powerful. His empire extended beyond tech. It reached into politics, into media, into places most people never saw. And as the trial approached, his immense wealth and influence began to corrupt the proceedings in ways that chilled me to the bone. The initial optimism we felt, the belief that justice would prevail, slowly eroded, replaced by a creeping dread. Julian's legal team, a formidable army of sharp-suited lawyers, moved with a calculated ruthlessness that seemed to warp reality itself. First came the security camera footage. The prosecution had initially assured us it would be damning. The yacht was equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance, but when it was presented in court, it was different, grainy, choppy. The crucial moments leading up to the push were strangely obscured, the angle shifting just at the wrong time. It showed Chloe and Julian arguing, yes, but then Chloe seemed to stumble, her arms flailing as if she lost her balance. The violent shove I witnessed was gone, replaced by an ambiguous blur. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Julian's lead defense attorney, a silver-haired shark named Mr. Sterling, purred, his voice dripping with condescension. My client was simply attempting to steady Ms. Davies, who, as the footage clearly indicates, lost her footing during a heated but otherwise normal disagreement. My blood ran cold. It was a lie. A blatant, sickening lie, presented with such calm assurance that it felt almost believable. Then came the witnesses, the crew members, the very people who had served us drinks, who had exchanged pleasantries with us. One by one, they took the stand, their faces carefully blank. Under immense pressure, all the supposed evidence, including manipulated security camera footage and coerced crew members, turned against Chloe and Violet. They recalled Chloe slipping and falling. They spoke of Chloe's emotional instability, her tendency to dramatize situations. They painted her as a volatile, attention-seeking woman prone to sudden outbursts. Ms. Davies was quite agitated that evening, was she not? Mr. Sterling would ask, his voice smooth as silk. Yes, sir. Very emotional, a steward would reply, avoiding our gaze. And you observed her stumble as if she had tripped? Yes, sir. It appeared that way, sir. Each word was a fresh wound. They were lying. I knew it. Chloe knew it. But their fear, their livelihoods, were clearly at stake. Julian's power extended far beyond the courtroom. It reached into their lives, threatening everything they had. The defense painted Chloe as unstable and Violet as a delusional accomplice. They portrayed me as her impressionable, overprotective friend caught up in her fabricated drama. Ms. Hayes, Mr. Sterling had sneered at me during my cross-examination. Are you perhaps prone to flights of fancy? To exaggerating events? Do you often mistake a simple stumble for something far more nefarious? His tone suggested I was hysterical, unreliable, my testimony worthless. I tried to recount every detail, every chilling moment, but under the barrage of their questioning, their insidious suggestions, my own memory felt like it was betraying me. They picked apart every discrepancy, every moment of fear-induced confusion. They questioned why I didn't scream immediately, why I hid. My valid terror of being killed became evidence of my unreliable state of mind. The walls were closing in. Our truth, so clear and undeniable to us, was being drowned by Julian's power. Each day in court felt like a slow, agonizing suffocation. We watched, helpless, as the narrative twisted, as the facts were distorted, as the very concept of justice seemed to bend to the will of immense wealth. Chloe was crumbling. I could see it in her eyes. The fire that had burned so brightly after our rescue was dimming, replaced by a deep, weary despair. We had faced the ocean's fury, but the courtroom felt like a far more treacherous, overwhelming storm. How could we fight a man who could seemingly buy reality itself? How could we prove what happened when every witness was coerced, every piece of evidence twisted? One evening, after another soul-crushing day in court, Chloe and I sat in her small apartment, the silence heavy between us. The news droned on in the background, a commentator dissecting Julian Thorne's impeccable character and the questionable accusations against him. Chloe stared blankly at the screen. "It's over, isn't it, Vi?" she whispered, her voice hollow. "He's going to walk away, and everyone will believe it was an accident. They'll believe I'm crazy." Tears welled in her eyes, silent and despairing. My own heart was heavy. I had never felt so helpless. We had done everything right. We had told the truth. But the truth seemed to matter less than the size of Julian's bank account. This wasn't the justice system I had learned about in school. This was a game, rigged by power. I reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. "No, Chloe, it's not over, not until it's over." I tried to inject confidence into my voice, but even I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. She pulled her hand away, shaking her head. "He wins, Violet. He always wins. What else can we do? We have nothing. He has everything." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her, my best friend, broken by a system that was supposed to protect her. And in that moment, a flicker of my own anger, long suppressed by fear and helplessness, began to burn. He wouldn't win. He couldn't. Not if there was any truth left in the world. My mind raced, desperately searching for an angle, a loophole, anything we might have missed. Every piece of that night on the yacht, every detail, replayed in my mind. The argument, the push, the calm walk away. And then, what? The rescue? The fishing boat? And then I remembered Chloe clutching something tightly in her hand as she was pulled into the dinghy, something small and rectangular. Her phone. "Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through her sobs. "Your phone. The one you had on the yacht. What happened to it?" She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and confused. "My phone? Oh, it got soaked, of course. Waterlogged. It was totally dead when we got rescued. I took it to that repair shop, Tech Haven, the day after we got back. Thought maybe they could salvage some photos, you know? Nostalgia. But they said it was fried." A jolt went through me. "Did you actually pick it up from the shop?" "No, not yet," she sniffled. "I just haven't had the energy. It's probably still there." A tiny spark ignited within me, a desperate, illogical hope. "What if it's not completely fried?" I murmured, almost to myself. What if there's something on it? Something he didn't account for?" Chloe looked at me, a flicker of something in her eyes. Not hope. Not yet. More like a desperate plea for me to be right. "It's a long shot," I said, rising to my feet. "A really long shot. But we have to try. First thing tomorrow morning, we go to that repair shop." The idea was flimsy, almost laughable against the behemoth of Julian Thorne's power, but it was all we had, a desperate gamble, and sometimes in the darkest moments, a long shot is the only shot worth taking. We had nothing left to lose. "It's a long shot," I had told Chloe, my voice barely a whisper in the quiet of her apartment. "A really long shot, but we have to try. First thing tomorrow morning, we go to that repair shop." The next morning, the air in the courtroom felt heavier than usual. Julian's lawyers, sleek and confident, looked ready to deliver the final blow. Mr. Sterling's closing arguments painted Chloe as a scorned ex-girlfriend, prone to fabrication, and me as her naive, easily manipulated accomplice. He spun a narrative of a tragic accident, emphasizing Chloe's emotional instability and the lack of credible evidence. The jury looked weary, their faces betraying a subtle shift towards doubt. My heart ached, a cold dread settling in my stomach. Hope, that fragile, flickering flame, seemed perilously close to extinguishing. Our prosecutor, a young, earnest woman named Ms. Davies, did her best, but Julian's money had built a fortress of lies. She argued eloquently, passionately, but without tangible proof to counter Julian's manufactured reality. Her words felt like whispers against a gale. As she concluded, the air in the courtroom was thick with resignation. It felt like the end. Then, just as Mr. Sterling rose for his final rebuttal, a quiet rustle came from our table. I looked at Chloe. Her face, usually pale and drawn from weeks of stress, held a new resolve. Her eyes, which had been clouded with despair, now held a steely glint, a spark of defiance I hadn't seen since that terrifying night on the dinghy. She reached into her oversized purse, her movements slow, deliberate. My brow furrowed in confusion. What was she doing? Was she looking for a tissue? A bottle of water? The tension in the room was palpable, everyone waiting for Mr. Sterling's closing remarks. But Chloe wasn't looking at Mr. Sterling. She was looking straight at the jury, her gaze unwavering. She pulled out a simple, old smartphone. It was battered, its screen slightly cracked, clearly not one of the latest models. It looked unremarkable, almost out of place in the high-stakes grandeur of the courtroom. The judge, initially annoyed by the interruption, raised an eyebrow. Mr. Sterling paused, a look of amused condescension on his face. He clearly thought Chloe was having some kind of breakdown, a last, desperate, theatrical attempt to garner sympathy. "Your Honor," Chloe's voice, though soft, carried an unexpected strength that cut through the hushed anticipation. "Before the defense begins its final statement, I have one more piece of evidence I'd like to present." Mr. Sterling scoffed, a barely audible sound. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Ms. Davies has rested her case. This is clearly a last-ditch attempt to—" "With all due respect, Mr. Sterling," Chloe interrupted, her voice gaining a surprising firmness, "this evidence just became available, and I believe it changes everything." The judge, intrigued by her sudden confidence, looked at Ms. Davies, who looked as surprised as everyone else. "Ms. Davies, are you aware of any new evidence?" Ms. Davies stammered, "Your Honor, I am not. This is a surprise." The judge looked back at Chloe, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Davies, approach the bench. Ms. Miller, what exactly is this?" Chloe walked slowly, deliberately, towards the bench, holding up the phone. "Your Honor, this is my old smartphone. The one I had with me on the yacht. It was waterlogged after Julian pushed me overboard. I took it to a repair shop, Tech Haven, the day after we were rescued. I thought it was dead, but the technicians there, out of curiosity, worked on it for weeks, and yesterday they called. They managed to recover data." A ripple went through the courtroom. Mr. Sterling's confident smirk faltered. Julian, seated at the defense table, shifted uneasily, a faint frown creasing his usually placid face. "And what data precisely did they recover, Ms. Miller?" the judge asked, his voice now laced with a keen interest. Chloe took a deep breath. "They recovered videos, Your Honor, and messages, not just regular messages, encrypted ones, from Julian and his associates." She looked directly at Julian, her gaze unwavering. Evidence of high-stakes illegal gambling, of drug trafficking, of money laundering. This wasn't just about the push, Your Honor. This was about the vast criminal enterprise Julian Thorne has been meticulously building. My fall was just an attempt to silence a witness who knew too much. The words hung in the air like thunder. The entire courtroom erupted. "Objection, Your Honor, this is baseless. Hearsay, wild accusations," Mr. Sterling shouted, his face finally losing its composure, turning a mottled red. He lunged forward as if to snatch the phone. The judge slammed his gavel down, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Order! Order in the court!" He seized the phone from Chloe. "Ms. Davies, approach. Mr. Sterling, stand down." He handed the phone to Ms. Davies, his eyes stern. "Ms. Davies, have this forensically analyzed immediately. Mr. Sterling, if this is indeed what Ms. Miller claims, your client's entire defense, and quite possibly his freedom, is in jeopardy." Chaos erupted again, more controlled this time, but still simmering. Julian's face, which had been a mask of nonchalance throughout the trial, finally fractured. His eyes widened, a flicker of pure panic replacing his arrogant disdain. He looked at his lawyers, then at me, then at Chloe, a venomous, desperate glare. The next 24 hours were a blur of frantic activity. The phone was rushed to a team of federal forensic experts. The courtroom was a buzzing hive of speculation. News channels, which had been ready to close the book on a tragic accident, now blared headlines of tech mogul implicated in massive criminal enterprise. When court resumed, the atmosphere was electrifying. Ms. Davies stood, her face grim, but her eyes alight with a fierce determination. "Your Honor," she began, her voice ringing with newfound power, "the preliminary forensic analysis confirms Ms. Miller's claims. The phone contains irrefutable evidence, videos showing Julian Thorne and his associates engaged in high-stakes illegal poker games with millions changing hands. Encrypted messages discussing drug shipments and distribution networks, detailed ledgers of laundered money funneled through shell corporations and offshore accounts. This is not just a domestic dispute. This is a vast, sophisticated criminal network operated by Mr. Thorne." The court erupted. This time, the gavel couldn't silence it immediately. Julian's entire corrupt empire was exposed. The judge, his face pale with shock, called for an immediate recess and ordered Julian Thorne taken into federal custody, without bail. Julian's lawyers, who had looked so smug just yesterday, were now in disarray, whispering frantically, their faces etched with disbelief and fury. Julian himself looked like a trapped animal. The arrogant facade had crumbled, revealing the desperate, cornered man beneath. He glared at Chloe, a silent, deadly promise in his eyes. But Chloe, for the first time in weeks, held his gaze, her chin held high. The new evidence instantly transformed the case from a domestic dispute into a major federal investigation. The initial charges of attempted murder were now just a footnote in a sprawling saga of organized crime. Federal agents swarmed, raiding Julian Thorne's offices, his lavish penthouse, his other properties. The dominoes began to fall, one after another, exposing layers of corruption that went far deeper than anyone had imagined. The coerced crew members, facing federal charges for perjury and obstruction of justice, quickly broke. Their new testimonies, stripped of Julian's influence, painted a damning picture of his rage, his violence, and his absolute disregard for human life. The manipulated camera footage was revealed to have been deliberately altered by Julian's security team, now facing their own legal battles. The witnesses who had conveniently recalled Chloe slipping and falling now recanted their statements, admitting they had been threatened and bribed, and then a new, even more powerful wave of revelations. Once the floodgates opened, they couldn't be closed. A number of other women, emboldened by Chloe's bravery, also came forward to anonymously accuse Julian Thorne of a pattern of violent behavior, emotional abuse, and sexual coercion. These were not just whispers, these were detailed, chilling accounts that painted Julian as a serial abuser, using his wealth and power to control and terrorize those around him. Their stories, once suppressed by fear, now added a damning layer to the portrait of a man utterly devoid of morality. The media frenzy was unprecedented. Julian Thorne, once hailed as a tech visionary, was now vilified as a monster, his name synonymous with corruption and violence. His empire crumbled, his companies investigated, his assets frozen. The powerful image he had so carefully crafted was shattered beyond repair. The trial, initially focused on a single act of violence, became a public reckoning for a man who believed himself untouchable. The testimony was harrowing, the evidence overwhelming. Julian, stripped of his power, looked pathetic, a shadow of the arrogant man who had once pushed my best friend into the sea. The verdict, when it finally came, was unanimous. Guilty, on multiple counts. Attempted murder, illegal gambling, drug trafficking, money laundering, and a host of other charges stemming from the women who had bravely come forward. The courtroom erupted in a cheer, a collective sigh of relief. Julian Thorne, The notorious tech mogul was led away in handcuffs, his face grim, his future now confined to a federal prison. Justice had prevailed, but it came at a cost. Chloe and I hugged tightly, tears streaming down our faces. Tears of relief, yes, but also of exhaustion, of trauma. We had stared into the abyss of Julian's darkness and survived. We had fought against immense power and won. Life after the trial was different. The media attention eventually faded, but the scars remained. For me, the experience had cemented my belief in the power of truth and the importance of fighting for what's right, even when the odds seem insurmountable. I continued my work in marketing, but with a renewed sense of purpose, using my skills not just for profit, but for causes that mattered. I became a fierce advocate for victims of abuse, quietly volunteering, channeling my own rage and fear into helping others find their voice. But for Chloe, the ocean, once a symbol of freedom and luxury, became a source of profound terror. The image of the dark, churning water, of Julian's face as he pushed her, was seared into her memory. She never set foot on a boat or near the ocean again. Her once carefree spirit was now tinged with a permanent shadow of caution. She found peace inland, working with animal shelters, finding comfort in the unconditional love of creatures who asked for nothing but kindness. Our friendship, forged in the crucible of that terrifying night, became stronger than ever, a bond unbreakable by any storm, legal or literal. We were survivors, forever bound by the secret we had kept, the truth we had fought for, and the justice we had ultimately won. The story of Violet and Chloe and their battle against the depths of power and deception teaches us a profound lesson. While wealth and influence can twist reality and corrupt the path to justice, the unwavering courage of those who refuse to be silenced, coupled with the undeniable power of truth, can ultimately expose even the darkest deceptions. True justice prevails when victims find their voices, and even a single, undeniable piece of evidence hidden in plain sight can dismantle an empire built on lies. If this thrilling journey into the heart of a high-stakes battle for truth resonated with you, if it made you believe in the power of integrity against overwhelming odds, please consider liking this story, subscribing for more narratives that dive deep into complex human experiences and the fight for justice, and commenting below with your thoughts and reflections. Your engagement means the world to me, and I deeply appreciate you joining us on this unforgettable voyage. Thank you for reading, and I hope to connect with you again soon.